If there are no further points of order, we come now to the 10-minute rule motion. Mr. John McDonnell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to bring forward to the House for support a bill to regulate the laser eye surgery industry in this country. 9 years ago, the Honourable Member, the late Frank Cook, took up the issue of the growing laser eye surgery industry and brought together a group of senior MPs that took evidence and examined the widespread concerns there were about the way the industry was operating. That included its employment of high-pressure sales tactics, its variable standards of service, and its often failure to provide adequate after-surgery care. Particularly, the treatment had unfortunate side effects. A consumer group which, and then the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, also brought forward their reports at the time, expressing their concerns about the development of the industry. Frank Cook, the following year in 2005, then brought forward a bill in exactly the same form as I'm promoting today. The aim was to give the industry an opportunity for it to voluntarily address some of these concerns before government needed to act. 8 years on, Mr. Speaker, and to be frank, I and other members have been shocked that the many instances of the problems we identified then are still occurring. In fact, in some instances have got worse. I just want to pay tribute to all those members of the public and practitioners who have come forward to their members of Parliament to explain how they were treated and to expose some of the current malpractices. I particularly want to pay tribute to Sasha Rodai from the My Beautiful Eyes campaign, who has supported so many victims of the industry itself. I don't want to tarnish all performers or all practitioners within this field, because there are many good out there, but we have to tackle the problems, otherwise it will undermine confidence in this surgery overall. Let me just say what's been found now. 8 years ago, we found that many of the corporates in this sector employed aggressive sales tactics to secure clients. From the recent evidence from actually clients, but also some former salespeople, the problem has actually continued and got worse. It often starts with a phone call, the offer of a time-limited discount, or the entry into a free competition for treatment. Patients visit the shop on a no-obligation basis for a consultation, but then after the phone calls start, we've had evidence of people getting 20 phone calls in a single day. Some of the salesmen are described as counsellors or refractive technicians, but they're minimally trained when what the surgery involves, and they are actually salespeople. And they come under intense pressure from their managers to clinch deals no matter what. Patients are often still not given adequate information about the potential risks involved in this surgery. In fact, one former Optical Express salesman described pressure from managers not to give customers all the available information for fear of scaring the customer off. The material used by some companies to promote sales has been proven on several occasions by the Advertising Standards Agency, I quote, to be unfounded, lacking evidence and misleading. The ASA upheld 17 complaints in 2011 against Optical Express brochures. The concerns continue to be expressed at the quality of the assessment of patients. The assessments can often be undertaken by someone quite different from the surgeon who actually performs the operation or provides often aftercare. There is no consistent approach. Good practice in any surgery recommends that the patient's consent is assured. A cooling-off period is recommended between the assessment and the advice provided to the eventual final decision. Many companies state that there is a 24-hour or 72-hour cooling-off period that is built into the consent procedures, and yet we have evidence now that this is not the case. What happens is some documents are placed in their hands, complex documents, into the hands of patients, and they're pressurised to a signature on the actual day of the surgery itself. Let me just say as well what my concerns are. There's no legal requirement for the surgeon to be qualified or experienced in this field of surgery. There are no regulations to this effect. Any doctor can undertake this surgery. The Royal College of Ophthalmologists introduced a certificate in laser surgery, but only half the current surgeons are actually practising surgeons have actually gained this certificate. What is worrying is that the trend towards certification is going down. In 2009, 29 surgeons took the exam. In 2011, 13. In 2012, 5. This year, none. There are worries have been expressed that the number of surgical operations an individual surgeon is contracted to undertake in a day. Sometimes it's 17 to 20 and sometimes more. There's no limit placed on the number of procedures that an individual surgeon can undertake. That puts time pressures on assessments, pre-op procedures, the operation and the aftercare. Coming on to aftercare, there are definite risks involved in this surgery, and some estimate that between 1 in 20 patients experience post-operative problems. This includes dry eyes, blurred vision, starbursts and glare. Many cases have happened where patients have found securing aftercare from the company is extremely difficult. Many are forced to resort to law and take months and in some cases years to receive effective remedial action or compensation. And then they're forced on many occasions to sign compromise agreements which include gagging clauses so they don't expose what's happened to them. In addition to that, they later find in some instances that the cost of the corrective surgery is deducted from compensation. There are many case histories I could go through, but we haven't got time. Many members have brought cases to me. But I have to say I've heard about the satisfaction surveys as well from the companies themselves, but we've also had ex-staff being told that these satisfaction surveys are given to patients and either heavily influenced by staff or even filled in by the staff themselves. And at least on one occasion where there's been an expression of dissatisfaction, it never came to light. Many feel, and I quote just one case, what the person said to me, I was misled, misinformed and missold. What needs to be done? Well, Sir Bruce Keogh, the NHS Chief Medical Advisor, examined the practice of laser surgery in his recent report on cosmetic surgery and concluded that action would need to be taken to regulate this industry. His report was published in April. The government has yet to respond. But let me just say this is the sort of agenda I think the government needs to address. And it's set out in the bill that Frank Cook brought forward and that I'm updating. Firstly, the industry needs statutory legislation. Voluntary mechanisms have failed. Secondly, all surgeons must be qualified, certificated and regularly competence assessed. This must be the minimum from here on in. There should be openness and transparency so that the success rates of individual surgeons and individual clinics are published so that patients can make considered choices. I think the government should also consider limiting the number of operations that surgeons undertake in a particular day. We restrict the hours of lorry drivers and pilots. We should also restrict the hours in which these surgeons work because they put their patients at risk. We should also ensure that high-pressure sales techniques must be made illegal in this area of work. There should be a legal requirement for companies and surgeons to provide full information in a comprehensible form about all the risks that there are for this surgery to the patients themselves. There should be sanctions now, I think heavier sanctions, against breaches of advertising standards and mis-selling by these companies because as a result of their actions they are introducing serious health risks to individuals. There should be a 7-day breathing space between the initial decision and the final consent, and this should be enforceable in law. There should be guaranteed aftercare, and if things go wrong, remedial action at the expense of the company, not the individual. And finally, there should be a compensation scheme. It should be a swifter and less litigious mechanism to secure compensation for individuals when they suffer loss and damage as a result of these actions. But perhaps, and we've argued this case before, it could be made easier and less litigious if it was an industry-funded scheme providing compensation to all those who can demonstrate that they've been harmed by this type of surgery. Can I just say this? The figures now, and it's very difficult to gain the figures on how many of these operations are taking place, but it looks as though at the moment it's anything between 100,000 and 120,000 people a year that are undertaking this surgery. This is too many people. If we gain on something like, even if it's 1 in 10, if it is the figure we suggested, 1 in 20, this means thousands of our constituents are being put at risk in an industry that is completely unregulated. So I urge the government to act now. I believe that there are many former patients, many excellent practitioners, and actually members of this House are willing to work with the government to work through a programme that will secure action based upon the key principles, which are about ensuring high standards of service, openness and transparency, accountability, and also ensuring that there is a proper sense of care of these patients for the long-term future. This is a serious matter. I know that the government is considering its response to Keogh at the moment. I'm hoping that's imminent. I'm hoping this part of this cosmetic surgery industry Part of the surgery industry overall is contained within that government's response.
Order. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as other opinions say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were a large number of members who want to support this bill, and I thank them. And I've had to select a range of members from different parties and different areas. That will be Anne Clwyd, Sir John Randall, Sir Bob Russell, Howell Williams, Mark Durkan, Jim Shannon, Naomi Long, Sandra Osborne, Michael Fabricant, Nia Griffiths, and Chris Williamson, and myself, Mr. Speaker.
John McDonnell.
Regulation of Refractive Eye Surgery Bill.
Second reading what day?
28th of February.
28th of February. Thank you.